Welcome to World Disorder. I'm your referee, Rachel Marsden. Today's episode is in English. It's special because we have two exceptional guests, two whistleblowers, almost as well known as Edward Snowden. And today, veteran NSA whistleblowers who inspired Edward Snowden's public disclosures weigh in with us exclusively here on Sputnik International. Leakers are everywhere this week. Wikileaks has just marked its 10th anniversary. Oliver Stone's film based on Edward Snowden has hit theaters. And the mysterious Guccifer 2.0 has just released documents allegedly claiming to be taken from inside the Clinton Foundation. All of this in the final stretch of Hillary Clinton's presidential run. Is this the new normal? And should it be? Intelligence services, if they function properly, can play a vital, critical role in democracies. Eric van der Sipt, a spokesman for the Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office, recently admitted to the Belgian newspaper Le Soir that the organization solicited data analysis assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, in locating Salah Abdeslam, a Belgian-born French national involved in the terrorist attacks in Paris last November. Abdeslam was captured in March, just hours after the funeral for his terrorist collaborator brother, Brahim Abdeslam, who detonated a suicide bomb in a Paris cafe. The Belgian prosecutor didn't confirm the use of National Security Agency signals intelligence data, but it's hard to imagine why the FBI would be of use halfway around the world, if not to tap the NSA on the shoulder and request its services in providing foreign electronic intelligence data. And who would complain about it? Would anyone in Belgium, or here in France, where I sit right now, stand up and defend the civil rights of a radical Islamic terrorist from intrusion by the American Big Brother? Not likely. No one would care about diplomatic cables related to wars if military interventions were largely viewed as a success. But we've seen Iraq and Libya turn into nests of CIA-trained terrorists, and we've seen trade agreements that sell out American citizens by taking their jobs. People end up thinking, I don't see anything useful going on here, so maybe these NSA guys really do spend all their time at work reading my email. WikiLeaks cables disclosing former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi's Botox treatments, or the bromance between Russian President Vladimir Putin and former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi are really just close cousins of the National Democratic Committee emails that showed party organizers conspiring against Hillary Clinton's rival Bernie Sanders in the primaries. It all leaves the impression that establishment elites spend their time on petty matters rather than working to solve real problems. Leaked data is a sign of an immune system failure. Until the sort of ineptitude and manipulation that the leaks highlight is purged from within government, there are no doubt going to be more leaks, if only because the optics favor the leakers over those responsible for the exposed government shadiness. In an information war, as with any war, there are going to be collateral damage. Informants and other intelligence assets who take great risks to collaborate with the U.S. government have been exposed in leaked documents, which means that fewer may be willing to cooperate in the future. Should we want leaks to become the new normal? I'd say absolutely not. In the long run, leaks are detrimental because democracies, by virtue of being more open, have an inherent disadvantage in the free information and leaked data game. So while leakers and whistleblowers are holding the most accessible to account, the advantage is going to those who simply do secrecy better. In a functional democracy, those who leak data that exposes governments are also compromising citizens to enemies who can use that data. But the operative word here is functional. When a democracy is dysfunctional and there's a chasm between the government and the people, then some exposure to the light of public scrutiny for purposes of disinfection is warranted. In 2002, William Binney and Kirk Wiebe, senior NSA cryptanalysts and whistleblowers, asked the U.S. Defense Department Inspector General to investigate the NSA for alleged waste on a program called Trailblazer, intended to analyze mass collection of communications data. Binney also served as a technical advisor to the new Oliver Stone film about fellow NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, and is often cited by Snowden as an inspiration for his decision to go public with his revelations. William Binney and Kirk Wiebe, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on with us.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So, William Binney, I want to ask you first. You served as a technical director to Oliver Stone for the new movie Snowden. Stone has suggested that Nicolas Cage's character in the film is based on you. In what what way and by whom exactly did you see the programs that you designed abused? And what was your interaction with Edward Snowden directly?
Well, first, I've not met Edward Snowden in person, and I haven't really interacted with him. I know his parents. I met them in Washington when they were here to receive a medal for Edward. And as far as the movie, I basically had designed the programs they're currently using to spy on the world. And so what they did was they took out security that I built into the program, like encryption of attributes until you can prove probable cause, and then target people. And also the filters up front where we didn't take in meaningless data up front, so we didn't have all that information in our databases. So we basically were giving privacy to people in the world, and we had an auditing program that we were looking at for our system to see who came into the system, see what they did, and whether or not they were violating any laws, regulations, or misuse of the data in any way. Those were the things that they removed.
When you say
removed filtering, so they
when you say
they removed the filtering so they could take in everything.
When you say they,
it was under Hayden's direction.
Are you talking about former NSA and CIA Director Michael Hayden?
Yes, and also President Bush, Dick Cheney. This was really under Dick Cheney. He was the guy orchestrating this, and Hayden and Tenet, the CIA director, were also part of this set of four people who decided to violate the privacy rights first of U.S. citizens and then of everybody in the world.
Now, former NSA and CIA Director Michael Hayden has repeatedly been highly critical of Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, saying that he represents a clear and present danger. What do you think is going on here? Is this the voice of the establishment speaking, or do you think it's just one guy giving his personal opinion?
Well, I'm sure it's the establishment talking, simply because nobody in the establishment wants Donald Trump. They're afraid of what he'll do. He might even call them out on all the unconstitutional, illegal activity they've been doing. And that's been when it gets into court, they always lose because this is obviously unconstitutional. Congress cannot pass a law that violates the Constitution, because then it's not a law. So all that retroactive immunity to the telecoms, all the things that they've done, once it gets challenged in the court on their constitutional challenge and it loses, all those laws fall. And that's what they're afraid of, you see. They want to protect everybody that's been a part of this conspiracy to spy on everyone.
Kirk Wiebe, the Snowden film portrays American citizens' data as being collected automatically, indiscriminately, and in a massive dragnet, including photos and emails, not just metadata. And not just incidentally as one party to an exchange that involves both foreign and domestic sides. To what extent was this accurate then, and do you think it's still accurate now?
Yes, I do, Rachel. In fact, I don't know if you saw the article that came out yesterday divulging the fact that Yahoo was indiscriminately searching emails, not metadata, but the actual content, for keywords provided by NSA involving millions and millions of email subscribers under Yahoo. It's just another fact in a long line of facts and discussions that have come out over the past 5, 6, 7 years that indicate that what Bill and I had been saying about the government is indiscriminately collecting emails and processing content was in fact the case, and now it's proving it to be so.
Now, just to follow up with that, Kirk Wiebe, there are a lot of complaints about potential abuses of NSA collected data, but are there any actual cases that you can think of where someone has legitimately proven that they've been victimized and abused?
No, although there is one court case in particular that is going through the system that do that, but it's been very difficult because the government often raises the issue in court that it's a national secret, that the harm that would come from disclosing such things would be irreparable to the government, and often the courts have gone along with that. But in NSA versus Jewel, it looks like that issue may come to a head in court, and so we'll just have to see what happens with that.
Now, William,
I have one thing to add to that.
Sure.
Can I add one thing here?
Absolutely.
In the case Amnesty International versus Clapper, it was challenging the constitutionality of NSA collecting all this data, and it made it to the Supreme Court. And in the Supreme Court, in the debate or the process there, the Solicitor General of the United States lied to the Supreme Court when he told them that none of the NSA data would ever be used against a person in court unless that person was told that was the source of data, because it gets to the constitutional right of the defendant in a criminal case to challenge the discovery of information against them. So he lost the case to the court. That was subsequently proven to be a lie. In fact, Senator Feinstein was bragging about the program in 2013, trying to defend it in the Senate on the floor, saying that they put hundreds of people in jail using this program every year. Well, I mean, those are the people being hurt. It's being done in secret, and they're corrupting the entire judicial process in that whole procedure. So I call that, and I keep calling it, a planned program perjury policy run by the Department of Justice of the United States, which I now call the Department of Just Us, after the Hillary stuff.
Okay, on the other side of that argument, for all the criticism of NSA data collection, the FBI was recently approached by the Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office in an effort to locate a Belgian-born French national involved in the terrorist massacre here in Paris last September, killed dozens of people, injured hundreds more. One would imagine that the FBI was used to obtain NSA data useful in its capture. Now, would they have been able to do this without the kind of system that the NSA currently has in place?
No, it's all done by NSA. If you looked at even the warrants that were issued by the FISA court, the general warrants that are really unconstitutional also, all those were at the request of the FBI to NSA, because NSA does all the data manipulation and compiling and storage. So, and in that case, what they were after was all the data in a program called Treasure Map. That's an NSA program. If your listeners want to Google NSA space Treasure Map, one word, they'll get the whole layout of that program. The whole objective of that is to monitor where everyone or every device in the entire worldwide network is every minute of every day. And so when they went to request the FBI went into the database at NSA and pulled that data out and sent it to them.
William Binney, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to something directly. At the Black Hat International Information Security Conference in Las Vegas 2 years ago, I asked former NSA Deputy Director Chris Inglis specifically about your system, William Binney. I specifically asked, could technology be used to make mass surveillance programs more respectful of privacy? Former NSA cryptographer William Binney says that he helped build a system with such safeguards, but that it was rejected by the agency's leaders. His response was, and I quote, and listeners can find this in MIT Technology Review, for whom I wrote the article, "It would be foolhardy for NSA to reject technology that would at once help us pursue national security and defend privacy and civil liberties. I know it ultimately didn't pass muster. There is incidental collection, as there are two sides to every communication in the world, but you're bound by law and policy to treat innocents as innocent until you have compelling information to treat them otherwise." And again, I'd like to give you the chance to respond to that. What does he mean by it didn't pass muster, and why should people be concerned that people bound by law and policy and secrecy laws would have this kind of access?
Well, first of all, what he's saying is totally disingenuous, since they took the program that I built, the software, the specific software, and are using that currently on their worldwide spying program. That's built into the programs in NSA. That's some of the data that was released by Edward Snowden, too. All that software is right there. So he's using it to spy on the entire world, but not filtering out or targeting like we did. So, yes, he labeled himself, really, when he said it. It'd be foolish to do that, and I say that's the proper label for him. And
Kirk Wiebe, I want to ask you, do you think that since your revelations as whistleblowers and Edward Snowden's more recently, that the attitude of the U.S. government has changed at all towards whistleblowing and whistleblowers?
It has changed, but only on the periphery, Rachel. The core, those in charge at the core of the government, mainly the executive branch of our government, enabled by the two intelligence committees of Congress, the one in the Senate and the one in the House of Representatives, are a close collage of organizations working at the behest of government, the leadership in government, to the peril of the people. And what I mean by the peril is that governments traditionally who have collected everything about everyone have only done so for one reason, and that is to control populations. It puts the people of the United States, and the world for that matter, the position of having the wrong person take charge of the apparatus and misuse it against all of us. That is not the kind of position we need to be put in. But they are clearly working in a close-knit group, and it is a very difficult thing to pierce. And until the people demand change, it's not going to happen.
And just to follow up with that same issue, if the U.S. government grants exceptions in the absence of any due process to intelligence community members like Edward Snowden, who breached secrecy laws that protect people's private information in their hands, doesn't it serve to, in fact, weaken people's privacy if people who work in the intelligence community figure that they can do this and potentially won't have serious consequences?
I would say, is that for me?
Sure,
So,
go ahead.
I would say absolutely. I mean, internally in NSA, they had a program they called Love Intelligence or Love Int. Mm-hmm. That's where analysts inside NSA were looking into the data, the content and metadata of the communications of everybody in the United States. They looked in there to find out if their lovers were cheating on them. So, yeah, and they did that without anybody knowing because they have no monitoring program internally in NSA and their entire network or their database to know what anybody's doing at any given time. That was one of the things we built into our program, ThinThread. They took that out also. So, the software, they dumbed down the software that we had, basically.
Mm. And William Binney, just to follow up on that, Edward Snowden has set out the case for Barack Obama, President of the United States, granting him a pardon before he leaves office in January. Given the high unlikelihood of this, why did his lawyers, you think, step up the pressure on the Obama administration for a presidential pardon more recently?
Well, I think they probably felt that this was an opportunity. I mean, he's only got a month or so, a couple of months left in his administration, and that he may want to try to do the right thing. After all, he is a constitutional lawyer. He knows right up front that what they've been doing has been unconstitutional all along. I mean, that
you're talking about Barack Obama.
Yes, Barack Obama is a constitutional lawyer, and so he knows or should know that everything they've been doing is unconstitutional. After all, it's been ruled that way in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals with NSLs, which is under Executive Order 12333, which he signed also, by the way. He should know that all this collection is unconstitutional. I mean, it's really pretty clear. It's simple. It's not hard to understand at all. And so I think they felt that there was an opportunity here when he was getting toward the end of his administration where he might say and do the right thing. I mean, otherwise he's got to give everybody involved, all the people in the Bush administration and his own administration that's involved in this, a pardon, immunity from prosecution.
Kirk Wiebe, I want to ask you now. We're hearing almost weekly, if not daily, about attribution of some of the leaks that have happened recently, and it always seems to be attributed to Russia without any proof of attribution, at least technical proof. We're just supposed to take the FBI at their word. Could they provide us with viable, passable, and credible technical proof if they wanted to?
Could the government provide that?
Yeah, to the public.
Question?
To the public. Could they, for example, could they disclosed, okay, we're aware of this leak or aware of this breach or this attack, and we're going to provide you with technical proof of attribution that passes muster for people who are looking for technical evidence, because all we're getting right now, as I'm sure you know, is the word of the FBI.
No, you're absolutely right. Yes, they could provide it. In fact, I'm sure, as is Bill, that they have all of Hillary Clinton's emails, all the ones she deleted. At least the chances are about 99 percentile that they have all of that. So yes, they could provide the proof, the technical evidence for just about any of these things.
And
I don't even believe that anybody in the FBI of any position has said affirmatively or has confirmed that the Russians were in fact doing this attack.
That you don't think they can technically confirm that information?
I don't think they have, period. I mean, this is an allegation done by the Democrats and the military-industrial complex that wants to start up a new Cold War. I mean, this is their motive, because there's an awful lot of money involved in another Cold War, just like there was in the last one.
Right. And the NSA has been accused of pushing a flawed encryption standard out to the industry, like the flawed dual EC DRBG encryption standard.
Yes.
While it provides backdoors for the NSA to access in software in order to gather data, it also opens up these flaws to bad actors, criminal elements, and other nation states. And in a recent on-air discussion with former CIA Director of Operations Jack Devine, he said that he believed such backdoors have been eliminated since the Snowden revelations and the ensuing fiasco. I kind of was a little bit skeptical about that response. What say you about this?
Well, I just think it's an outright lie. I mean, the whole point came out just not too recently, where some of the software that NSA was using from the Tailored Access Office, some of it was compromised, and I think they have a whole list of the attack procedures out of the Tailored Access Office, which is software that can go in and penetrate firewalls, switches, servers, and networks. And so that there's all kinds of, not counting the Bull Run program to penetrate the encryptions once they're in. But all of that stuff has existed all along. I mean, they knew these weaknesses were there in the entire network worldwide, never told anybody, and they never fixed anything. That's because they wanted to keep the window open so they could look in and see what everybody was doing. Well, that's really nice, but it leaves everybody really vulnerable and exposed. And that's why you get all these hacks of different companies all have been fixed in spite of the fact that NSA has known about them.
And Kirk Wiebe, how did weapons-grade cyber warfare, the kind that we know of today, actually begin? Was there a particular symbol clash moment that you can point to?
No, it's been evolving very slowly. In fact, Bill and I have sort of tongue-in-cheek smiled about the calls for billions of dollars in the name of cyber warfare, because cyber warfare is not all that different from the normal intelligence collection and processing and analysis piece. They have about 80% overlap, with the only part of cyber warfare or cybersecurity being the nomenclature and those issues that have to do with the transport and the identification of users and data coming across fiber lines these days. So we believe, again, it's a huge money-making opportunity. The contractors, those in government in bed with contractors, have been milking this issue for at least a decade. It certainly wasn't new when Bill and I retired. The task was known. But if you listen to the talking heads of government, they say the threat has never been worse. We need money, and clamor for money just continues unabated. So it is solvable. It's just the way it's being handled that's leaves a lot to be desired, Rachel.
And William Binney, it's WikiLeaks' 10th birthday this week. Founder Julian Assange just gave a press conference yesterday. How would you compare Snowden's situation vis-a-vis the U.S. government to that of Julian Assange?
Well, I think it's probably very similar. I mean, after all, Hillary Clinton was at one point thinking or requesting that we drone Julian Assange, use a drone to get him. I mean, if
she denied that, by the way. She denied that yesterday. What do you think about that?
I'm sure she will. Well, she denies a lot, doesn't she? And then the fact checkers find out that, in fact, yes, she did these things. So, it's just we're being fed just a pack of lies, not only from all our representatives and people in government, but also they're lying to each other. Notice that the agency heads and the DNI lie to Congress. The committees were lying to the rest of Congress. That's why Representatives Amos and Conyers had a coalition of Democrat and Republicans that wanted to unfund the NSA activity because they finally realized they were all being lied to by their own members, as well as the agencies, as well as the administration. The whole thing is built on a pack of lies back and forth. It's a really corrupt government we have.
William Binney and Kirk Wiebe, senior NSA cryptanalysts and whistleblowers, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
My pleasure, Rachel.
And thanks to you as well, the audience, for joining us here. You can listen to the show again anytime at sputniknews.com or desormondial.com.